It's time for the final listicle of the week, and for that, we go to G.I. Joe Classified. Cue that sexy intro. Well, hello there, gang. I'm Photo Dave, and this is Toypixx. And whether this is your first or 100th time on the channel, Toypixx is all about action figure photography. It's about helping you get better and hopefully helping me get better. So with that, I talk about action figures, talk about photography. I'll talk about some photography tips and tricks. I'll talk about why I collect certain lines. I'll talk about what's going on in the toy industry, talk about Dio stuff, all that stuff that will help make my picks and your picks absolutely awesome sauce. That's right, awesome sauce, because old references. So if that sounds good to you, go ahead and click subscribe, and while you're doing that, I'll talk a little bit about today's video. It's gonna be 5 things I want to see from G.I. Joe Classified. I'm not talking figures necessarily, I'm not talking individual stuff except for maybe one thing that I really kind of want to see. It's more ideas to help Classified just crush it, because truly, I think with just a couple tweaks, this could be the best action figure line out there. People may agree, they may disagree, but for me, I'm loving the photo opportunities that this thing's presenting. So, let's get to it. Now, the first thing I really want to see, and I'm not going to belabor this point because I talked about it in a previous video, but I want more head and hand options. I want my Joes able to punch. I want them able to hold up a gun with the other hand. You know, I want just chill hands. I want maybe a goofy head to bring back some of those Sunbow days. All that stuff. And remember, I know a lot of people don't necessarily dig a lot of extra heads and hands, but I come at this from a photographer's point of view. And things that really can help a figure stand out and make them do a lot more things in front of the camera are head and hand options. So I'm a big fan of that happening for G.I. Joe. Now, I know a lot of people will say maybe more weapons. G.I. Joe figures get a pretty good loadout. And let's be honest, if we're really collecting this line and we're not happy with the guns they're getting, there's a whole lot of great customizers out there, a whole lot of third-party stuff to accessorize our Joes with. One of my favorites right now is Gridiron Studios. I've gotten guns for them, or from them, for Beachhead. I've used them for Roadblock, like I've got a whole loadout set of his. And I've got a green shotgun for Flint, because Flint's the man. He needs a green shotgun. So there are no shortage of weapons makers out there for us. But if Classified could hand us some heads and hands, woohoo, that would be awesome for the camera. The next idea may not be the most popular idea, but hear me out. I want the current design team to get a stab at creating figures that are based a little bit on those late 80s and 90s G.I. Joe figures. That's right, the Crazy Neon, the Star Brigade. I want them to be able to make some Eco Warriors. I dig Ninja Force even, just those looks. But here's the catch. I'd want them to dial down the neon a little bit. I love splashes of color on my figures. That's one of the reasons I got rid of Gung Ho, is because he was just a boring figure with a whole lot of green and black and some silver weapon. There was nothing to really pop on that figure. Also, the reason that I got the retro one on pre-order, but I digress. I do love my pops of color, no doubt. But if they were to take some of those designs from those years, tone down the neon a little bit, and add their own flourishes. Remember, I'm not totally married to 80s and 90s designs. It would just be cool to get a little bit of inspiration from that stuff, because those designs were crazy. They were wacky, but they'd be really interesting in front of the camera, as long as they weren't also kind of eyesores. You know, I don't want these things to be assaulted by too much neon. Now next, I would love it if the current design team could create all new characters. But here's the catch. I would also like them to have file cards that would flesh out what that character was all about. The big deal about Larry Hama's writing when it came to the file cards way back in the 80s and 90s is that even without any exposure to the cartoon or any exposure to the comics or any of that, any kind of media exposure, without any media exposure, a kid could read that file card and get a sense of who that character was. And I just think that's really cool. That allows the toy line to stand on its own. If you've got a figure that doesn't have any kind of backstory, that's just a figure that's cannon fodder. You might as well put him in a Star Trek suit and just send him out there in a red shirt. Red shirt. Now, here is the only thing I'm thinking of as far as an item, instead of like an overall thing to help the line out. This is something that I think would just be super cool and would help satiate the hunger for vehicles without going too overboard. Because let's face it, these are 6-inch figures. We don't want like Night Ravens unless, we can hang them from ceilings and have really huge ceilings, and they can also make that Night Raven an X-Men jet, and oh good lord, I don't want to give them ideas. But what I'm thinking here is a 2-pack of vehicles with a HISS tank and either a Vamp or an Awe-Striker. So there's your HasLab. It's Cobra versus Joe. I think that would be very cool. Now, the HISS tank would need to come with a HISS tank driver. Non-negotiable. Now, if it were an Awe-Striker on the Joe side, they could release Crankcase later. No worries. We know who Crankcase is, and I'm sure Lenny and the team could just make Crankcase ridiculous. I think Lenny and the team could make an awesome toll booth. And toll booth was just basically a green shirted dude with a construction hat and a hammer. I would love to see what they do with toll booth, but I digress. Anywho, you don't need Crankcase specifically if it's an Awe-Striker. You don't need any figure specifically if it's a Vamp. But what I would do for all those who want green shirts, and I'm not one of them, I think the G.I. Joe should stay specialized. They don't really need green shirts. Little support staff, people to help out with the computers and stuff, I'm cool with. I'm good with that. Green shirts, not so much. But for those of you who dig the green shirts, let's put a man and a woman in with either the Awe-Striker or the Vamp, either way, and give them several options when it comes to heads and hands so we can cover multiple ethnicities. I think that would be really sweet, and that would also bolster the army for Joe while building a little bit of a sort of a big battle scene between vehicles when it comes to G.I. Joe and Cobra. I can only imagine how crazy these photographic possibilities would be. But if those figures are cost prohibitive, maybe release them later on down the line and just give us the HISS tank with the HISS tank driver and either an Awe-Striker or a Vamp. Make it a HasLab. Give us the things. We will spend the monies. And last, but certainly not least, and possibly one of the least popular opinions on this video, because I know how much people really want their 80s and 90s G.I. Joes in 6-inch form, I want to let the design team go nuts. I do. I love the work these people are putting into it. I want to see them go in totally fresh and do something more along the lines of Pursuit of Cobra with Classified. I just think that would be incredible. I think Lenny and the team have the chops to do it. The only restriction I'd put on them is I would say make sure that the character still looks like who the character is. Like when they designed Flint, if they'd given him a totally new look, just make sure he's got the beret and some shotgun shells somewhere, and boom, that does it. But I'd take the gloves off even more for these. For a character like Flint, or any of the characters, I would say here's the thing. We've already made a version that people like. Now, for this newer version that you guys are going to go crazy for, all we want you to have to do is put the same head and the same hat or helmet, if they have one of those, on the figure. Just name it the same thing as the head and the hat or helmet or even lack of represent, and boom, you've got a new figure, but the same character, just dressed up in more of a Pursuit of Cobra style or more of a modern or just futuristic, just something a little crazier than what they're able to do by following media like video games and the 80s and 90s toy line. Like, can you imagine if they did something similar to any of the Pursuit of Cobra Dukes and all they had to do was just plop on the current Duke head they're using to make it so you know, hey, that's Duke. I would be super stoked about that because I think this design team could actually really nail it. And folks, that does it for my list of the 5 things I'd like to see from the G.I. Joe classified line. Good times, just a few things, a few tweaks to make this what I truly believe would be the best action figure line out there. Loving it so far. Few things could be done to just make me sit there and go, I don't want to take pictures of anything but G.I. Joe now. Probably not true. I still love my Moff X and my 3-0. But I digress. G.I. Joe, awesome stuff. Comment below. Let me know some ideas you have for the classified line. What you would do to make it the best action figure line out there. And as always, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop some Amazon affiliate links down below. I'm just going to drop just a ton of the G.I. Joe stuff. So you can check it out if you don't know what all's out there. And if you're feeling spendy, feel free to click on any of those links. If you need anything on Amazon, you don't have to buy what the links lead you to. But hey, you get something, it helps out the channel, and I appreciate it just as I appreciate all your views. And then there's a couple other things, housekeeping things that I want to bring up. One is, I really do want this channel to be about helping you get better at action figure photography. So comment below and let me know also how you would feel about critique videos. If somebody were to say, send me in photos and ask me to critique them, what I think about them. And understand, I would never be a jerk about it. If you're asking for a critique, that means you're trying to get better. And there's nothing wrong with that. That should always be commended. So let me know if those kinds of videos interest you. Also, this weekend, as promised multiple times, I am going to order a microphone for this thing because this sound is, well, it's killing me. I'm sure it's killing you. So I'm going to sit down. I thought I had it picked out, but now I've got to look up microphones a bit. But before I record the next video, I will order a mic for this crazy iPhone. And finally, that's all I got, folks. So, have a great weekend, have fun, and happy snapping. See ya.